Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to have you in this very important event. And its importance because of many pillars. First of all, because we are talking or discussing Africa, and Africa is the continent of the future. I would like to describe Africa as a jewel on the shelf, and it's a jewel, but we need to polish this jewel. It's the continent of the future. It's rich with its resources and with its youth. The second aspect is it's very important because we are talking about governance, which is considered to be one of the main important things for development. Then thirdly, because and which is the core of the event, is that we have Mo Ibrahim Foundation, this extraordinary foundation that one of its main responsibilities under the supervision of Mo Ibrahim and his team to work very hard and to exert effort in for the sustainable development for the continent and to work on this aspect in a scientific way, meaning to gather statistics, to gather information, database, and awareness for the diversity among the countries and how and what are the needs and the demands of the continents. Without these, we cannot talk about sustainability. So this is and the last point that I would like to mention is that when we talk about Africa, the whole world is focusing on Africa, but because of its interests, that they actually establish projects in Africa for their own benefits. And actually, sustainable development will never be achieved in the continent without the activities and without the work and the effort of the African countries. So having this event conducted in Egypt, this is very important. In the opening session, I'm going to give the floor to Engineer Tarek Tawfik. Please, the floor is yours. In the name of God, ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure having you with us today. And as Dr. Abla said, we have this is a gathering for the experts and scientists. Actually, today this event is very important for the ECES, the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies, that we start a kind of cooperation with Mo Ibrahim Foundation initiative about Governors Index for Africa. I would like to add that the perception of Africa is a comprehensive continent, that we have a cultural, historical, language diversity, and together the whole country is under one umbrella. This is a big mistake. Each country has its own culture, its own problems, its own civilization, and its own history. And actually, the Governors Index for Africa is considered to be a serious start to define Africa for the future. As Dr. Abla said, Africa is a jewel that need to be polished. The perception of Africa for the investors, it's considered as a mine, that they are abusing this mine. And now Africa, the promising Africa in the near future. And I think having this kind of indicator, and that is adopted by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, is considered to be one of the important points that can be attractive for the investors. Without being lengthy, we are going to start our session with a video presentation from Mo Ibrahim Foundation, and then after this we go on with the session. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Mo Ibrahim, and I should have been with you in Cairo today. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, so I thought at least I'll just say a few words to welcome you. We are really delighted with this meeting and this initiative of Dr. Abla Abdel-Latif. I think it's important for the think tanks in Africa to have these sort of discussions, etc. Our foundation is really focusing on the issue of governance in Africa, and we think it's important really to evaluate and measure. Policies should be based on data. Data-driven, policy-driven data is important, and that is not, unfortunately, fully understood by many of our leaders in Africa, but we are getting there. The idea of the index is try to provide a tool for governments and civil society to really see where they are and what's been achieved, what is the outcome of policies, and how to move forward, and also to compare what's happening in your neighborhood, because if somebody is doing something good, maybe we should copy it or learn from it. It is that sort of process. We define governance really as a structure based on 4 legs. One is rule of law and security. Without rule of law and security, there's no society, there's no civil society, there's no civilization. Then there's the issue of the economic opportunity, and we call it sustainable economic opportunity, which about management of public finance, infrastructure, transparency, etc. Then human development, health, education, and finally the soft area, which is includes human rights and democratic rights. We call it participation, really, because don't think democracy is just about election. It is much wider than that. So we measure about 100 parameters in every African country, and we publish it. And as I said, the objective of this is not to flatter a country or to criticize another country. The objective of this is to have a discussion based on data. We are collaborating with about 35 bodies around the world. Every single number in our index is referenced. And this is the most valuable reservoir of data on Africa, which my colleague, Dr. Janneh, will be presenting to you. I think he's be accompanied probably by Yannick. And I hope what they present you find useful. And once again, thanks for Dr. Abla Abdel-Latif, and thanks for the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies for the initiative. Thank you, and I'm sorry I'm not with you.
We are going to start our session with Mr. Abdoulie Janneh, Executive Director and Liaison with the Governors and Institutions in Africa, Ibrahim Foundation. Please, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody here. Let me start by really recognizing the high table on this important personalities, former Prime Minister, Mr. Minister, and of course the Executive Director of the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies. I just want to follow up a little bit on what Ibrahim said. First, he asked me to again reiterate, he even told me that last night, how sad that he is not being able to be here with us. He continues to have great admiration and respect for his country. That he feels he owes a lot, and therefore I should really make it very clear that it would have been best for him was to have been here. He also wanted us to salute really this initiative, maybe one of the first that we've been able to do in Africa, and he salutes the ECES, the great work that you're doing, and of course the Director General herself. So we're happy to be here. And as Mo said, really what the index is all about. I used to work for the UN, I was an Under-Secretary General in the UN, and I left some 7 years ago. And I joined simply because I believe in what this institution is doing, the foundation, which says they're trying to promote governance and leadership in the continent. And governance, as he said in his brief statement, which is really looking at those delivery of those goods and services that governments are required to deliver to their people and what the people expect. So it's a fantastic tool. It is the most comprehensive data set you could have anywhere in Africa, and we put it together in a very credible manner. And it is not really to be a source of criticism, but a source for dialogue and discussion within government, by government and its partners, between different countries and so on, just to see where our policies are heading to. And therefore, it is in this respect also we feel that, collaborating with the center on this is worthwhile, and we hope that we will be able to replicate this kind of dialogue and discussion in other countries. And of course, for the foundation, it's not only the index that we do. Maybe it is the most important product that we do in this, our desire to promote governance in a continent, but we also have the Ibrahim Prize that most people know us about, where we give $5 million to credible leaders who are leaving office, and it's the biggest prize, bigger than the Nobel Prize and so on, and it's been going on since year 2006. We also have a fellowship program where we put young aspiring leaders into credible institutions, the Economic Commission for Africa, the World Trade Organization, and the ITC is one of them, and so on. So we put, and certainly African Development Bank, which is our prime financial institution. We organize on a weekly basis, we take a week every year to really have a dialogue around governance. What are the key issues, what are the challenges? And we hope that really from henceforth we will have the Director General amongst us, and some of these great minds that we see around the table. So these are also some of the initiatives that we try to push and so on. But the important thing, as I said at the beginning, is really the index. We should look at it, not as a tool of criticism or praise, but as a tool that captures the reality in a given country. And as we always say, we are a photographer. We don't decide how you look, but we just take your picture at every given time. So that's what you do. You have this data set, and I encourage that we use institutions like ECES to debate it, to look at it, and bring civil society, government, and other sector part of society in a given country to really see what are we learning from this. What is it that we are doing so well that we can continue to do? What is it that we continue to areas there we need improvement? There is a league. That's not important. That's just for bragging rights. What's important is really the details that you have in the index. It's one of its kind, and I certainly commend it to you. I know that the Director General of ECES is very familiar with it, and that's why she has invited us here. We are very happy that she's done this. We salute her for bringing us to Egypt, this great country that we all admire, which continues to be an example for our great continent, and which is helping us, as she said, that we really develop our continent, the greatest in the world. If you look at our land size alone, you can put in the United States and China and everything. The day we gel and we come together and do these things, certainly will be bigger than even China. I can assure you that. And maybe this dialogue is the beginning of that process of bringing us together. Thank you very much.
سيد الدكتور فاروق
دكتور فاروق الباز, Director of Center for Remote Sensing, Boston University. Please, the floor is yours. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, it's my pleasure to be here with you and to contribute in this forum, because the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies, it has a place in my heart, and I totally appreciate this center. I know that the correct economic thoughts are the main tools for development. As you can see, the chairperson of the ECES is an expert, is a scientist, and actually Dr. Abla Abdel-Latif as well. Dr. Abla is she is a specialist, an excellent specialist, and she knows how to exert efforts in order to achieve the goals and the objectives of the ECES. So, in my own point of view, having Dr. Abla in the ECES, it upgrades the center itself, and because of her good intentions and how she actually deal with the employees in the center and how she support them, how she motivate them, and actually this is very important. Beg your pardon, because we forgot that the president of the manager of any center, of any place, his own objective is to support the employees, to upgrade the employees with their own work, to support the employees and to give them positive energy. Because if the employees are happy, are satisfied, I'm sure that the manager or the president will be satisfied as well. It's not important to focus or to spot the light on the manager or the president. No, it's very important to focus and to support the employees, that they are part of the team work. In front of you all, I'm telling you, Dr. Abla, she is one of the most famous economists all over the world. As we are conducting a conference talking about Africa, this is very good for me, because in my point of view, in Egypt, we forgot that we are part of the African continent. We forgot that geographically, we are part of the African continent, and this is unfortunately like for 50 years ago. Why? Because focused on Europe, on USA and Russia, and we forgot Africa, we forgot our continent, we forgot our people. Since the time of Gamal Abdel Nasser, we were focusing on Russia and how Russia can support Egypt, and then after this, El Sadat was focusing on the USA, and now we are thinking about Europe. We never ever focused on Africa, on our continent, and this is very serious, this is very dangerous. If we studied our ancient history, our ancient Egyptian history, we will know how important Africa is for Egypt. The water that is coming from Africa, the river Nile, our African neighbors, what are they doing? What are the civilization and the history and the culture of our African neighbors and our ancient Egyptians, those who established the civilization? The majority of their civilization was established because they were aware of the importance of their neighborhoods. Queen Hatshepsut, she is one of the most famous queens that she ruled Egypt in the ancient time. Actually, during the ancient time, 6 queens ruled Egypt, but Queen Hatshepsut, she was the most famous Egyptian queen who ruled Egypt in the ancient time. Queen Hatshepsut wrote on the walls of the temple of Deir el-Bahri on the west bank of Luxor. There is a big scene on the wall just reminding us that Queen Hatshepsut sent an expedition to the land of Punt, which is Ethiopia nowadays, telling the story of the expedition, saying that I sent an expedition to Punt, to the land of Punt, taking with them all the gifts and the presents from Egypt, and then on their way back, on the way back from Punt to Egypt, they brought with them animals and rare trees and rare plants that they were planted in front of the temple of Queen Hatshepsut in Luxor, the west bank of Luxor. So Queen Hatshepsut reminded us that we are part of Africa. Actually, we as Egyptians, we live in Africa. We don't live in Europe. And we have to cooperate with our neighborhoods. We should have good relationships with our neighborhoods. But we totally forgot. And me, when I visit any of the African countries to visit the experts or scientists in Chad or Gambia, any African country, the people in Africa will always ask me why Egypt forgot us, why we are not on the mind of Egypt, why you're not thinking about Africa. Omar Bongo, the African president, he told me personally, Egypt doesn't know that we are neighbors. Egypt doesn't know that we live in the same continents. They meet me in the streets telling me, why you're not focusing on us? Because they know that in the ancient Egyptian, they knew. Unfortunately, only the ancient Egyptian knew that we are a part of Africa, that we live in Africa like Queen Hatshepsut, and this means that there were good relations during the ancient time between Egypt and between the African countries. We now, in the current time, we forgot about this, and as if we are living in the European continent. Our brothers in Africa, they need engineers, they need support, they need doctors, they need vets. We have. We can help them. We can support them. Why they don't go there and help our African brothers? When Ibrahim Mehleb was with the Prime Minister, he sent some engineers to Chad, and I saw how the Africans respect the Egyptians, how they were respecting the Egyptian engineers in Chad. This means that these countries, they know our values, they know that we are brothers, and they know that if we cooperate with them, it will be a kind of cooperation. We are not going to abuse them because we are neighbors, we are like brothers. And when the Egyptians are welcomed in Africa, so this means that they are most welcome in the African countries. We have huge numbers of civils that they are unemployed and they are trying to find a job opportunity in Europe. And if they find a job opportunity in Europe, they will be mistreated. But if they choose to go to Africa, they will be well treated, they will be respected, they will be welcomed. And if Africa will be upgraded, we will be upgraded too. If Africa achieve the sustainable development goals, we will achieve the sustainable goals too. If there is a kind of development in agriculture, economy, and trade in Africa, this means the benefit will go to Egypt too. Actually, it was a big mistake that we forgot about Africa, that we are part of Africa. For this reason, whenever I see, when people are showing respect and showing support to Africa, I totally contribute, I totally participate, like the ECES, to conduct good relations with the Africans, to build bridges of dialogue and discussions. This means that we now understand the value of Africa, and we understand if we support our continent, I think that our unemployment graduates will find job opportunities. Now, generally speaking, China works in Africa. There are lots of Chinese in Africa, and the Chinese, they don't speak the language, they don't know the culture, they don't know the civilization. So for me as Egypt, it's better for us as Egypt to be there instead of China. I know the language, I know their culture, I know their civilization, we know the customs, we know the traditions. Egypt is part of Africa. We should cooperate with each other. It's unfair to see the big countries that they are conducting good relations with Africa, and we are not in the scene at all. This is not correct at all. In my own point of view, there are lots of things that happened that they say that, or they indicate that we are in a very bad relation with the African countries. We are disappointing our neighbors. We have to look around. We have to look at our neighbors. These are neighborhoods. We live in the same continent. They are like our brothers. We have to support them. We have to help them. You know that. I am talking for many years about the development corridor that is going to start from the Mediterranean Sea till the north of Sudan in order to connect the entrances and the corridors from Upper Egypt, as we forgot Africa. Here in Egypt, we forgot Upper Egypt. So in order to support Upper Egypt, we should have corridors from every city in Upper Egypt to have agriculture development, health development, economic development, to develop the city, to develop the area. And after we conduct these development, to be connected together and to be connected to North Sudan. And actually, in my own point of view, this at the end, this corridor should connect between the Mediterranean Sea and Cape Town in South Africa, not only North Sudan. We don't have a railway that connect the African countries. There are lots of railways on the west of Africa, but there is nothing to connect the north to the south of Africa. South Africa, they established the railway from Cape Town to Johannesburg to Honisio. Now there is a development corridor that is established by South Africa that reach Rhodesio. So I wanted to do the same from Egypt, from the Mediterranean Sea to till the Sudanese border. Then after 10 years, we continue from Khartoum to Rhodesio in order to conduct such enormous corridor of transportation, of electricity, to establish new cities, to connect the Mediterranean to Africa. So if China would like to establish any projects in Africa, they should pass through my port. Then they will reach Africa. So this means that the cooperation with Africa is going to be to benefit us on the for the youth, for our geographical situation. And for this reason, I'm very happy and I'm very glad that the ECES is conducting such a conference and is supporting such ideas. And I want that we continue on thinking this way when we have conferences. With Africa, we should do this a lot in order to go back to our own idea that these are our continent, these are our brothers, and we have to cooperate together. And I'm very happy to be in this conference, and I would like to thank Ibrahim for establishing such foundation, because it supports the African cooperation. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Dr. Farouk. Now, His Excellency Ambassador Mohamed Labarang, the Ambassador of Cameroon in Egypt, please. The floor is yours. Dean of African Ambassadors, His Excellency Dr. Mohamadou Labarang. In the name of God.
Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I feel privileged and honored and humbled to take the floor on this occasion. I would like, first of all, to thank Dr. Abla Abdel-Latif, CEO of ECES and the Ibrahim Initiative Foundation, for giving us the opportunity and the platform to discuss and apprise the process and also the challenges facing our dear continent, Africa, at this point of time. As you are aware, the general perception on Africa has evolved positively, and cliches are flourishing. Africa, the land or the continent of future. When we hear this, we start to dream, to think of better days, and sometimes it can also lead us to go astray. Because dreams and opportunities available, when they are not well managed, will only lead us to Ethiopia. I didn't say Ethiopia, but I say Utopia. Just think about this. Africa, land of future. But is it one Africa? Somebody just pointed out that we are speaking about Africas. If you think about it, the Africa that is now portrayed as land of future basically has not changed. The resources of the soil, of the subsoil, are the same. The countries that are now rushing to Africa are rushing for what? For their own sake. They are rushing for those resources. Not long ago, Africa was being despised, colonized, barely taken as the theater of waging wars, proxy wars for foreign ideologies. So here we are now talking of the Africa that the others depict. So, which future do we envision for Africa? Nobody, I say nobody can predict the future. But we have the power and the possibilities to coin alternatives for ourselves and choose. Choose and act. But to do that, we need to analyze the present and the past and see what are the real course of action that should be taken to allow us tailor the future that we want for ourselves with our resources. And when I say resources, I don't only think about the resources of the soil, but the resources of our people. And when talking about people, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa can boast of having what it takes. Young population, vibrant youth, and female that are being empowered to coin and tailor the future that we want for Africa. There is the reason why I see this meeting, this encounter as a milestone. Because here we are having the possibility, based on data, which are not produced by ourselves, which are being produced by reputed organizations, to really address Africa, the Africas that we want, and the future that we want to address and achieve. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give this to your reflection. Are we going to create the Africa for the others, or are we going to really think and come up with a course of actions, policies, and directives that would lead us to a better Africa for our children? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Labarang. الآن معنا معالي السيد الوزير هشام توفيق وزير قطاع الأعمال العام.
Hisham Tawfik, Minister of Public Enterprise Sector. The floor is yours, sir. Your Excellency, former Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers, honorable ambassadors, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I will try briefly in 10 minutes to shed the light on the importance of governance, not only as rules or directives, but in a broader sense. And I will not speak in my capacity as the Minister of the Government of Egypt or the Minister of Governance of Public Companies, but as a person who reflects on the economies. And I would like to invite Ibrahim Foundation to reflect more with me, to conduct necessary studies, to reflect what I'm saying. I would like to thank first the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies for hosting us and for excellent organization. I'm honored and privileged to be among a galaxy of scholars and diplomats here, and I hope I can add to the conversation. Countries, whether developed or developing, have not succeeded yet when it comes to having a government to apply governance rules. The main reason for progress was the private sector that participates with the state in managing the economy. So developing bylaws or regulations is one important thing for governance. Here I am referring to unions of chambers of industries or different syndicates. These entities are setting the rules and are managing the affairs. These entities are also training their own members. These entities provide technical and vocational training. These entities inspect. These entities suspend memberships or admit certain entities as members. These entities set certification criteria. This is not the role of governments, but the role of professionals. If we want industries to thrive, if we want things to thrive, then we need to engage stakeholders and allow them to manage their own affairs through federations, to practice self-regulatory, to work as self-regulatory organizations. Without the permission of government or the support of government, the success of any country will be conditional upon the efficiency of the ministries working in this country. So some ministries will move things forward, other ministries will make us go backward. The sustainability of public sector is conditional upon the professional people in the public and the private sector. These people are the main driver of development, and we need to engage these people in governance. This is a very important introduction. I would like to refer to the experiences of the EU, for example, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Japan. In emerging economies and developing countries, I can cite 10 examples at least: Malaysia, Singapore. If we want to refer to a certain model that is an excellent model, then it's the German model. Please go to hdki.com to know more about self-regulatory organizations in Germany. I will try to introduce governance in Egypt. We are developing the rules of governance, especially in public enterprise sector companies. Today we are setting the rules, we are changing the law, we are changing the bylaw in order to have effective governance. I can share with you, because Dr. Abla told me you have only 7 minutes, so I will not take longer. Among the most important rules comes choosing the board members. We have around 800 companies, whether holding companies, joint companies, or affiliated companies that use public funds. Of course, you know how important board of directors are in setting strategic plans, and we had a problem when it came to choosing the members. Nominations or selections were based on networking or was based on favoritism. But now we have a unified database through which we can nominate potential candidates for our countries. So to choose a board member, then this board member should have a long track record of the industry. The only exception is to have a staff of one of the public company with a long experience of investment or industry. So this database is a rule or a requirement for nominating anyone for the position of a board member. We also cared for representation of shareholders. So if we have shareholders who own 40% of a public company, so the 60% is owned by the state, then we cared for representing those 40%. So as a public company now, I can only be represented or I can only control 60% of the board members, but the rest are the shareholders. Also, it's important to include a statute that is empowered by professional people. Also, we should set rules for how much capital can the company lose. In Egypt, we have companies which lost their capital, but they started to work, and the loss is doubling or tripling. Now, in the law, no company can work beyond its capital. and companies sometimes have to be liquidated. I think the situation in Egypt holds true for other countries. So we cannot protect companies that are losing, even if the state is a shareholder or if the state is the owner. If a company is making losses, then we need to stop that. Of course, disclosure is key now, and countries are obliged to do so. Countries are obliged to issue quarterly financial statements, whether these companies are listed in the stock market or not. The General Assembly and the shareholders should be made aware of the situation of the company every 3 months. As I said, representing the government in the board of holding companies should depend on expertise and experience that would add a lot. This shouldn't based on some people who are not experienced enough. I hope I could give you a brief background on the developments all over the world and the situation in Egypt, and I stand ready to convey any nitty-gritty details to any of the ambassadors or the diplomats here. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Now I'd like to give the floor to His Excellency Ibrahim Mehleb, former Prime Minister and CEO of Bayt Khebra Group. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, dear colleagues, honorable ministers, honorable ambassadors, when I speak of Africa, I speak of a humanitarian experience. I will try to summarize what His Excellency the Ambassador said and what Dr. Farouk said. Dr. Farouk said we are far off from Africa, and the Ambassador said we need to study the past and the present. Yes, of course, in the past we played a bigger role. Looking at the map of Africa till the 60s, for example, two countries were independent, Egypt and the Sudan. Egypt played a major role in liberating other countries in the movement led by Nasser, Gamal Abdel Nasser. And the peoples of Africa did not forget that. Whenever I visit any country in Africa, I found a square or a street named after Gamal Abdel Nasser, or a university named after Gamal Abdel Nasser. This is a humanitarian link, because in all the liberation movements, Gamal Abdel Nasser played a role. We were celebrating these liberation movements. We have great founders Nkrumah, Sekou, Nasser, Ahmed Ahidjo, our great fathers. They represented the hope, and Egypt embraced all these movements, and we paid a heavy price in 1956. The tripartite aggression was not done only to nationalize the Suez Canal. No, it was to stop Egypt from supporting the independence of Algeria. The past is there, it's well established. As for the present and the future, I started my activity in Africa in 1994 in Nigeria. That was the start of my career there. The experience was amazing. It was exemplary because I handed over the company with 11 branches. Most of these branches were making huge profits. How so? I think always as a human who believes in Africa. I'm proud of being African. I say so. I'm proud of being Africa. Because Africa is full of pride. It's a rich continent. Yes, it was subjected to a cruel colonization that exploited much. But Africans are not bitter people. No, they are kind people. Africa has reconciliated with all the countries. What we saw in South Africa shows the true color of African people. It's similar to the gold and diamond the continent has. These people do not want to exact revenge. These people are not bitter. These people want to make peace with everyone. The whole world is focusing on Africa as the land of the future. But we should do our duty regarding development. Here we have Development Agenda 2063, and Egypt is contributing much in its capacity as the chair of the African Union this year. Egypt played a major role in implementing this 50-year development agenda. Today we want to refer to the situation of Egypt and its relation to Africa. I conducted a simple statistics to reflect that. The visits paid by His Excellency the President Abdel-Fattah Sisi are many to Africa. 30% of presidential visits are paid to Africa. In 2019 alone, more than 25 initiatives targeted Africa. In February 19th, the Conference of Center for Conflict Settlement were held in Egypt, a conference for heads of constitutional courts. Another conference for metrology was held in Egypt. Lots of conferences were held in Egypt. Egypt participated in all the conferences of Africa, whether bilateral conferences or bilateral meetings like Africa USA. I was honored to represent Egypt in this conference. We participated in China, Africa, Russia, Africa, German Africa conferences. Egypt participated a lot in these meetings. In the Egyptian constitution, we mentioned in 2014 explicitly that Egypt is part of Africa, and this is an extension of history and geography that cannot be changed. Dr. Farouk El-Baz wants to link Alexandria to Cape Town, and this project is underway, or the studies for these projects are underway. We have a vision that's being studied in the Ministry of Transport. As for the health sector, Egypt provided much to this sector. The recent initiative to cure 1 million African people of virus C or hepatitis C. Dr. Adel Adawi started this effort, and we made good results, remarkable results. Let me go back to the humanitarian aspect. We worked in 11 countries. With Egyptians, no. We had 15 to 20 Egyptians, but we depended on African cadres. They are excellent people. Education there is superb. It's more than excellent. So in finance and accounting, for example, Nigerian accountants were the best. So we worked with, or we sent Nigerian accountant to Chad, or a Moroccan accountant to work in a francophone country. This cohesive team work was based on the idea of forming a small model of the African Union. We had to believe in the abilities of African people. Even laborers or technicians are excellent there. In Cameroon, for example, we worked with African laborers in the electricity sector. We did not send drivers or technicians from Egypt. We trained workers there, and with the training, Africans made incredible results. We did not wear the Egyptian hat while working in Africa. No, we wore our African hat. So when we worked in a village in Africa, for example, and we had a small clinic serving the whole village. That's how we planted the seed of love between our mission and the African people. Thanks to God, I was honored more than once. I was given 3 medals from 3 countries, not because of my professional career, but because of the bond we built. Now, today, I would like to thank Dr. Abla for convening this conference, and I would like to ask her to convene another conference with a special focus, bringing together Egyptian organizations, whether public or private organizations, operational in Africa. Those organizations that are working on the ground. We need to collect data in a very practical manner. Of course, intentions are great. We have many MOUs, but the main driver is having a win-win situation. We need to identify these drivers. We need to unlock the potential. 60% of the gold is in the continent. We have lots of minerals, but we were exploited. Our resources were stolen, and we say enough is enough. We need to develop ourselves. We need to protect ourselves. We need to use governance. Yes, we were stolen before, but we will not allow that to happen again. How so? With governance. We have excellent organizations like Ibrahim Foundation and the likes, but I want to have an Egyptian African organization because we have a lot to provide. We have a lot to give because the Egyptian experience is excellent. The rates we achieved, whether of the projects implemented or of economic reform, can be given with much love and appreciation to African countries. That was the main driver that made Egypt responsible for the dam in Tanzania. This is a successful Egyptian model. There was a hot debate. People told us since the 60s you did nothing to Africa. We said, but we implemented 500 dams in Egypt. Because this is, or we have the biggest earth-moving project in Egypt, in El Galala mountain. The biggest geotechnical project in Egypt was implemented in the northern of El Tafri'a. We conducted a port in a soft clay area. It was the biggest geotechnical project all over the world. In concrete projects, we also have excellent projects. So we have everything. So the Egyptian experience is ready. The model is there. I don't want to talk for long. Now it's time to have a will, a real will, and an ability. of course, coupled with awareness. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I'm pleased and honored to meet a galaxy of scholars and diplomats, and I wish Mr. Hisham Tawfik best of luck in this important initiative. Thank you so much.
We will close the session, but Dr. Abla is telling me that the third session will talk about the case of Egypt now. I would like to tell you that without governors, without transparency, without accountability in any society, I think that yes, Africa, the enemy was coming from outside, but actually we have an internal enemy. So when we have both enemies, the results will be very bad. And for this reason, the future of Africa, including the future of Egypt, is in transparency, governance, and accountability. I'm so sorry. When I was in my speech, I forgot to mention a very important thing, that I will not attend the third session. I would like to announce launching the first phase of Gusur project, which connect the foreign trade, the Egyptian foreign trade, and 10 African countries. We launched the service on Friday with the first trip from El Ain Sokhna to Mombasa. There is a weekly trip or journey for maritime cargo, and then the second phase will be the first quarter of next year. We're going to choose 2 countries at least from East Africa in order to provide complete services, cargo to sealers, in addition to consolidation and customs services, in addition to maritime cargo. This, in addition to Gusur project, we are establishing a company, a big company for marketing and mediation between Egypt, either export or import, and the 10 neighboring countries. This company is going to be a private sector. The majority will be private sector. But in addition to another company under the umbrella of the ministry, in addition to the 3 main banks, the Bank of Egypt, Bank Masr, Bank Jikar, and Bank of Alexandria. As His Excellency President Abdel-Fattah al-Sisi said, we depend on the experts, on the skills, on the competences, and we work on the wholesales. We are not competing the retails. We see what we can get from the Egyptian factories, what we can export to the African countries, and I hope that this will exceed the foreign trade to investments, because you all know that the natural resources of Africa are taken raw, and they are taken to the big countries and then manufacture the raw material and then exported once again as products to Africa. So we are talking about processed or semi-processed. I also would like to talk about another project. We in the Middle East, we have 3 countries that they produce aluminium, and aluminium, it depends on in its raw material, which is the bauxite. The bauxite is not available in the whole world or in Africa. Sorry, in Africa or the Middle East, except in Ghana. Ghana got about 25% of the bauxite, of the reserved bauxite all over the world, and unfortunately Ghana, they don't have any manufacture for the bauxite. because one of the phases of bauxite is alumina, and then from the ammonia to the aluminium factories. We have in Egypt an aluminium factory owned by the ministry. We have in Bahrain and in Emirates, which is considered to be the biggest factory of aluminium in the Middle East. Those countries, if they unify and they decided to cooperate with Ghana, I think that this will be a big achievement. We, as Egypt, we can do this, and for sure we are going to find more products for our project in order to discover the available resources in Africa and what are the means of cooperation in order to enhance the trade between the African countries and to scale up the percentage, which is 12% of the trade between the African countries. Thank you very much.